at it again. The boys are back. We got Drew back. We got Eric, and I am Kevin Wells. This is the Club Dub Podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. It's been a while. Had a couple guys reach out to us on Twitter this week about missing the show. We missed you guys too. Finally, tons of Bears news to talk about, tons of NFC North news to talk about, and maybe even the most AFC West news to talk about. We got a lot. We got a lot going on. A quarterback carousel, NFL free agency never disappoints, even though it's been quiet for us here in Chicago. But what's going on, guys? Club Dub Podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. Boys, how's it been? It's been at least a month since we've all three done a show. Eric and I did one a couple weeks ago about the Khalil Mack trade. Obviously, we'll talk about the repercussions of that. But Drew, what's going on, man? How you been?
Been well, man. I think the last one I did was the one right before the Super Bowl. So it's been a nice little break for me. It hasn't been a break in real life, but it's been it's been a long time since we've done a show together. So missed you guys, missed the show, and good to be back.
No question. Eric, what's new with you, man?
Just staying busy as usual, trying to come to terms with all this NFL news and the Bears wanting no part of it. So, it's just one of those things.
Isn't that weird? And that's a great segue into this. I think a lot of people, including myself, they've been so quiet in free agency. And although we all want to point the finger at Ryan Poles and he wants to build the team how he wants it, it is frustrating when your biggest signing fails his physical in Larry Ogunjobi, guy you're about to give $40 million to, and then to pivot and sign a couple guys that no one's ever heard of before. So I think Bears fans are kind of wondering, when's that big splash going to be here? And I think we all have to look and realize that big splash isn't coming this offseason. And this is a year where they're going to have to use the draft to the best of their ability, even if they don't have as many picks as Green Bay now does with the Devontae Adams trade, which we'll also get to later on in the show. But I guess the word to describe it for me, it's frustrating. You guys?
I mean, frustrating would be a word just because you'd like to see more action because they still have about 50 roster spots to fill. So you'd expect them to be a little more active than they've been. But I think Poles has made it clear he's not going to be rushed into any of these decisions regarding free agency. He wants the market to come to him. A lot of teams operate this way, Baltimore being one of them. A lot of those teams that like to build through the draft, they're sort of operating with that philosophy. And because we were so used to Ryan Pace and how he operated, which was aggressive in free agency, it's that pro personnel background he came from. He liked to use free agency to sort of supplement the roster with the draft. Poles doesn't work that way. He wants to use the draft to build the foundation and then use free agency to sort of sprinkle on top, with the right sorts of deals. And that's how they operated in Kansas City. So I understand a lot of people are frustrated. They want them to build around Justin more aggressively because he's only got so many years left on the rookie contract and all that stuff. But Poles is trying to clean up a mess that Pace left behind, and he wants to do it his way. He wants to do it what he views as the right way, which is building through the draft. And history says when you take that approach, it usually works out well, provided you do your draft evaluations correctly. So, I'm willing to be patient because Pace did it his way with all the aggressiveness in free agency, and it really didn't work out for him. So I'm willing to try a different method.
And I mean, I know recent moves and recent years, Ryan Pace spent a lot of time trying to fix some of his draft mistakes and the fact that Mitch Trubisky didn't pan out. And so he was trying to overcorrect in free agency. But if we think back to his early years, he kind of used the same approach. He was very cautious in the beginning. I think his first real splash in free agency was Pernell McPhee. It was his first real signing. And that was, again, in the mold of that younger ascending player who's on his second contract and hasn't really proven himself as the bona fide star, but has the potential to get there. So Ryan Pace used the same philosophy in his early years. And we're seeing a little bit of that from Ryan Poles. And quite frankly, I like the approach. I think the Bears don't have a real window to a Super Bowl contention in 2022, even though, in theory, you make the dance and everything, anything can happen. And the NFC just got a lot easier in some ways. But I think that the fact that they need to use this year as a real gauge to understand if Justin Fields is the guy, their real probably first possible year to contend is 2023. This year should be setting themselves up for real contention in 2023, 2024. So you don't want to be spending on free agents that are going to be kind of like towards the last weaning part of their prime this year. And then in 2023, 2024, those are just kind of more bloated contracts. That's kind of what they tried to get away from in Khalil Mack. So I think the approach is sound. Obviously, they just need to fill roster spots, so they just don't have enough of a team right now. So I can understand some of that frustration, but I think the approach, to be determined if it works, but I think it makes sense.
Certainly, and I think that this is something. I mean, look at our other teams in town. With the result, with the exception of the Bulls, I mean, these are teams that are waiting for the market to come to them. The Cubs and the White Sox, same thing. So it's something we've become accustomed to as fans. I think it's just difficult when you look and see the other teams in your division. And I know the Packers just sold Devontae Adams. They were kind of forced into that, but they have 11 picks coming up this year and the quarterback position figured out. And they pick ahead of the Bears in both. Now they have 2 first and 2 second-round picks. And they've signed guys on defense. They don't really have many starting positions to fill out. Yes, the timeline's different, but if I'm looking at both of these teams now, and I'm looking at how the success the Bears have had against the Vikings over the last couple of seasons, with the result of exception of last year, if you want to show that Justin's the guy, there should have been a more significant option for that wide receiver position and offensive line. I know that a lot of the guys they're signing are younger players. I think I saw something today. They haven't signed anybody over the age of 28, which is good. I know Lucas Patrick, our new center, he's young. I don't know his age exactly, but Justin Jones, the 3-tech they got from the Chargers instead of Ogunjobi, he's only 25. Pringle just coming off his rookie deal in Kansas City. The Equanemeous St. Brown is a weird signing to me. But again, it's very clear that Poles wants a younger roster. He doesn't want to commit money to the future just in case the quarterback doesn't work out and you might have to go out and trade capital. So all of that makes sense. I just think that there should have been a more significant investment in a wide receiver one, because if you're just pivoting towards the draft when you have 6 to 9 spots that are still starting spots that you need to fill on this team, that might arguably have a more important position than the wide receiver one, that should have been addressed with an Amari Cooper signing or a trade. I mean, or somebody who can fulfill that one, because right now Darnell Mooney is still your number 1 and Pringle's your number 2, and that's not the worst position to be in. But a guy like DJ Chark who signs a 1-year prove-it deal with Jared Goff and the Rams, I mean, what? Like, why was the market not there from Ryan Poles for a guy like DJ Chark? It's little things like that really just kind of ticked me off a little bit.
And that's fair. I think part of the reason Chark and certain other guys weren't targeted is because of the unusual situation surrounding health of some of these guys. They're coming off, a lot of them, season-ending injuries. A lot of them were picked up on franchise tags and eventually extensions. So a lot of the big names sort of fell out of the picture pretty quickly. And then you have somebody like Christian Kirk, who was just handed $18 million a year, which completely threw the market off base. And all of a sudden, these other receivers who are clearly, who feel they're better than Kirk, saying, well, if he's getting 18 million, I should be getting this much. And the Bears are like, well, we're not going to pay you that because you're obviously not worth that much, because he's not worth that much. So I think that's what scared Poles off. He's not going to be overpaying for guys. He can't do that right now because he's trying to get the payroll in order. He's trying to get younger, as Drew said. So I think it was sort of a perfect storm of circumstances to where the Bears have been quieter at wide receiver than they probably would have been otherwise. I still think they're going to be adding more bodies. There's still some decent options out there. I think there's a good draft class coming in. I think they're going to be aggressive on that front. They've been, very heavy in terms of scouting on certain guys that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. So they're going to be active at wide receiver. It's just going to be a longer sort of drawn out timeline than just a few quick moves and then just moving on to another position. It's kind of a weird offseason that way.
Yeah, it really is. And I think whenever there's a market that's so distorted, like the wide receiver market's been, this year, I can't blame them for necessarily sitting out, because how many real wide receiver ones really signed this offseason? Chris Godwin was franchise tagged. Michael Gallup was franchise tagged. Who was really left? Like Christian Kirk. I love Christian Kirk, but that money is wide receiver 1A money, and he was definitely more of like a slot guy, in my opinion.
I'd argue Allen Robinson's a wide receiver 1.
Sure. And
on the fence.
Sure.
Take away last year's productivity. On the fence, and maybe not, and especially not in the offense he's going to. He's going to be, a 2, maybe a 3, but
It's fair. I think the one thing that I'm a little bit surprised about was they didn't make an offer for Robert Woods. I think that would have been a very good place to get involved, considering it was only a 5th-round pick.
Goes back to the health thing.
Yeah, it's probably the case, and Ryan Poles is clearly sticking very closely to those medicals, especially considering they let the Ogunjobi deal fall through. So it is a weird market. I think the Bears will be certainly active in the draft. I think the undrafted free agent market will be, again, a very big spot. I know, Eric, you wrote about this, where
I think they're going to be very, very active in the undrafted market.
Yeah, because there's so many spots on the team, they can really offer, all these players like, hey guys, we have opportunities to compete because we just don't have people signed on our roster. So please come here. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is after the draft, there's going to be a glut probably of extra receivers that are going to be cut because teams have to fill out their rosters and sign their draft picks, and they're going to have an overload of players. So there's always this extra wave of free agency that we don't really think about after the draft, and as we get into training camp, that the Bears will have an opportunity to get some more folks into the room. And it may not be a wide receiver 1, but if you get another wide receiver 1B, 2A type of thing to pair with Darnell Mooney, and you have Byron Pringle as your 3, and Equanemeous St. Brown is at 4 or 5, with Daz Newsome maybe making a leap. Like, you have a room that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you got a young room and a speedy one at that. And again, I think that fits to what Poles he wants to do. He wants more speed. We've seen him now.
Versatility too. He mentioned that word a couple of times. You've got a couple of guys now with Newsome, who's got returner ability in addition to his thing. Byron Pringle had 621 return yards last year, in addition to how well he did as a receiver. So they're searching for guys that can do more than one thing besides, yes, be receivers, but also just playmakers you can get the ball in the hands of, and they can make some things happen. So it's a bit of a different approach, but one that actually could work out, if they get these guys in the right positions.
And they got to bring back Jakeem Grant then. If that's the type of guys you got to bring him back.
I was going to say,
wasn't he already signed? I think he was already signed.
He was signed by another team, and I was kind of sad about that. I would have loved
to
sign
him. I didn't even see that. Who signed him?
Yeah, I think it was.
Was it Cleveland?
Might have been Cleveland or Miami.
Man, I didn't know that. Breaking news. I'm stupid, and I didn't figure that out. It is Cleveland?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was Cleveland.
Good signing for them,
first try.
Yeah, 6th-round pick last year to get Jakeem Grant, and he was our best offensive playmaker in the second half of the season.
It was awesome. He was a lot of fun to watch.
I didn't like him returning kickoffs, but on offense he was great. That's weird. Man, I did not know that. That kind of see again. This offseason, I understand where they're at, but it's little things like that where he had everything you wanted on an offensive side of the ball. He was a faster Cordero Patterson, who I believe is also still
re-signed
in Atlanta.
Did he re-sign in Atlanta?
Yeah.
They gave him a 1 year or
2 year.
2 year?
Was it 2? 2 or 3? I think it was
2. I knew he was staying down there. I just didn't know what kind of deal they gave him. But either way, the offensive playmaker's leaving, and I understand the Tariq Cohen thing. He's not injured. His career might be over. We feel for Tariq and things like that. That made sense to me. It's just some of these other guys that you really think that, especially on these 1 year prove it deals, would have made sense here in Chicago. And the fact that there's not so much of a push for it, it's frustrating. Allen Robinson walks away to sign with the Rams. No surprise. We knew that. We knew that going into this offseason. He didn't want to be here. He wanted to be, he wants to contend. He wants to be with a winning program, and he's going to he's going to the Super Bowl champions. So he's going to play with a great quarterback in Matt Stafford. And I think the cool thing for Allen Robinson is he didn't make as much money as maybe he sought out after. I don't know how much, if he even got offered a contract sheet from Ryan Pace before he left, but I would almost assume that, the Bears would have paid him a little bit more than 15, 16 million a year.
The rumor is they wanted to pay him around 16 million a year. That was their range, and he wanted initially 18, but once more contracts started to come in, and the rumors were it sort of bumped up to 20. And then, that's how far the gulf was, and that's why negotiations completely broke down, and that never really re-engaged, even after he started struggling. So there was a lot of bad blood between him and the regime. So he was always going to leave. I think we all knew that. Yeah. He wanted a fresh start somewhere else. He wanted to go somewhere he could win and hopefully play with a good quarterback, and he got both in, Los Angeles. So you really can't blame him for that.
He got a hell of a deal from them too. Like the signing,
15.5 million a year. It's probably not what he wanted, but he's in a great situation, so I'm sure he was willing to take the slight pay cut.
and the long term and the longevity of it, the 3 years to play
Mhm.
in a really good team. I didn't think Los Angeles was going to get him. I'll be honest. I thought maybe the Chiefs as a long shot for like playing on a good team, but the Rams really surprises me, and especially now if they still have money to go get OBJ, that's probably top three
Sounds like
wide
OBJ
receiver
wants to
room.
go
And
to the Colts.
really,
Yeah.
hmm,
Yeah,
He sent out a tweet about that, about saying how great it was that Matt Ryan went to the Colts. It's a great fit and all that, which was a wink, wink sort of thing, I'm sure, because they've got some decent receivers, but they still probably could use a little more firepower for him. And
yeah,
what better way to represent yourself than praising the move? So
I mean, it's interesting. The Rams are a great example of just continuing to invest in position players that are going to make your offense better. I mean, OBJ helped, put them over the top towards the end because he gave him that speed element that they really didn't have, especially after Woods got injured. Now they go out and they add Allen Robinson to the mix. I mean, teams that are consistently strong on offense, continuing to add to the wide receiver room, they're the ones that usually are successful. It's a great story. And honestly, as the Bears build this foundation over the next year, 2 years, they are almost undoubtedly going to add at least one or probably two more receivers this year, probably more competition bodies. But next year, I would expect another significant investment to continue adding to that room.
all right.
here was Allen Robinson's goodbye to the Bears. He posted this on his social media pages, and this means more than just a listen. That's a pretty lengthy thank you, and I think that he realized that fans like us and writers and the people who cover this team really appreciated what he did. And while many maybe said he checked out at the end of last year, it's kind of hard to blame him for being misused in an offense and kind of being told that he didn't really have a place there. Not non-verbally. He was basically shunned out of the playbook. And yes, he could have tried harder, but for most of the time, he had to deal with 5 quarterbacks here. And I think the fact that he put up with that and was a big part of this offense for all those years and all those clutch catches on third down. He's one of the best receivers the Bears have had in the last 20 years, if not the best, since a prime Alshon and Brandon Marshall. So this means more, I think, than just a lot of players don't do this. They'll just tweet out, "Thank you, Bears Nation." This is a big look at this. I mean, I want to express my deepest gratitude for Chicago Bears. It was truly an honor to play for your storied franchise. The McCaskey family, the coaches, the front office, the staff, thank you for your belief in me and thank you for the opportunity. The brothers I gained in the locker room, it was an honor to suit up and play beside you. The bond we have forever. I look forward to seeing all of you, the success for all of you. To my foundation board, your support has been invaluable. All we've accomplished would not be possible without you. And finally, the fans and the city of Chicago, thank you for embracing my family and me. So many great football moments were shared on Soldier Field. Yeah, I mean, the passion radiating from all of you, those will never be forgotten. I think a lot of that coming from 2018. Bears Nation, you always have a special place in my heart. Thank you for everything. That's not just a statement, just covering your bases, good pro. That's a guy who recognized that these fans recognized what he was doing. And I know us on our show, we all did that too. And even though last year was frustrating, you look beyond that and you realize that he was a special player and he really was fun to watch. He was the type of player we love in this city, a guy who was always out there playing hard. So kudos to Allen Robinson. I'm going to miss him big time, but it's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the thing that about A-Rob was he was coming off that torn ACL back in 2018. So the Bears really took a risk on him, giving him the contract they did. It was a well-paying contract, 3 years, gave him a little security. And, he was allowed to work himself back into top tier form. Unfortunately, 2021 didn't go as planned, but he looked like a great receiver for, 3 years with us. And it's really unfortunate that things ended the way they did because the Mitch Trubisky experiment didn't work out. If it had, he'd probably still be here. But, that's just the way it goes when you miss on the quarterback. So it's unfortunate he wasn't able to continue his career here. But, we'll always have those, real solid seasons he played. He helped us get to the playoffs twice. And, he was better than pretty much most of the receivers we've had over the past 40, 50 years.
Yeah, I agreed, and that's why I think there's a lot of there's a couple comments in here, not to not to throw you off, Rami. I know you're watching. We appreciate you following, but stuff like this, stop feeling sorry for him. He should have been a professional. Dude, man, he was a professional. He had to deal with a lot of bullshit here, and I think he was a professional through most of it. And he didn't throw his teammates under the bus. Go back and listen to all his press conferences. He didn't throw Matt Nagy under the bus. This was a guy who had to put up with a lot of BS here and a lot of drama and turnover and things like that, especially at the position that is making him his money. So, you're right, Eric. You put it best. It's unfortunate that it had to end the way that it did. But Bears will get a comp pick for this. What do we think? It probably, I would say, a 4th-round pick if we're hopeful. Maybe
I don't
next
think they're
year.
going to get anything, unfortunately.
Don't think they're going to get a comp pick for this? Why not?
I've been following over the cap. They usually do a good job of following the comp formula, and because of some of the lesser signings like Pringle, St. Brown, those are compensatory free agents, and the more compensatory free agents you sign versus the ones you've lost cancel each other out. And right now the Bears are 2 over where they need to be. So unless they get 3 of their other free agents to sign as compensatory guys, they're probably not going to get anything for Robinson.
Well, let's think here. Akeem Hicks is probably going to sign elsewhere. He'll get a job, so that's one.
Mm-hmm.
Who else, though? Yeah, I mean, Danny Trevathan,
Danny Trevathan's going to be – and he was cut, so it wouldn't matter.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be Akeem, and I saw
maybe Andy Dalton might.
Maybe Dalton.
Okay.
But, I mean, in general, I mean, the Bears are going to make a lot more moves, so it's going to be tough. But
it's probably going to be a couple of years before they really get invested in the compensatory pick formula. That's the way it happened for Kansas City. They weren't involved in compensatory picks for a long time, but once they started drafting well and had their foundation in place, that's when they were able to let guys go and just continue to sort of, funnel their youngsters through. That's usually what it has to be like. It's the way for Pittsburgh, Baltimore, all these teams that are really good about building compensatory picks.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I didn't realize that. I thought that if a free agent, that's news to me. I thought if a free agent signed somewhere for a decent contract, I thought that awarded them a comp pick, but I guess that would make sense. It would balance out depending on the guys that you sign. So, yeah, that makes me kind of hate the Equanemeous signing even more. I never understood that, but we'll see what he does. I don't know.
He's not an offensive pick. He's a special teams pick. He had 7 special teams tackles last year for the Packers, probably their best special teams gunner. So that's probably the reason his knowledge of Luke Getsy and the whole Packers style offense and all that will probably help, but he's going to be a pure depth guy who's going to help on special teams. That's why he was brought in.
Yeah, we'll read through what Ryan Poles had to say about some of the free agent signings shortly. But the other big news here, Packers trading Davante Adams to the Raiders. The Raiders giving him a $28 million a year contract, the highest paid wide receiver in the league by a lot. Well deserved. I don't think $28 million is deserved, but he deserved to be the best or the highest paid receiver in football. He's the best receiver in the league by a lot. I'm not giving them $28 million a year, and I think the Packers recognize that too. And this is the thing: we don't like them, but the Packers run their organization very well. This is a team now that has 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks coming up this year, and they've re-signed their core guys on defense. Yes, their wide receiver room is a mess, and I think losing Davante Adams puts a significant death blow into their Super Bowl hopes for this upcoming year. And with Rodgers' contract kind of being all over the road, we don't even know the details of it. We just know it was like, what, $50 million over a year, and then, like, what did they say, 3 years?
It was basically a 3-year extension at around $50 million a year. That's the average. So he's now the highest paid player in the NFL, which is what he wanted to be.
So this gives them a significant amount of room to invest younger, which is it's a great organizational move for them. It just, it's good for their long-term future, but their short-term goal of winning a Super Bowl, I mean, you lose Davante Adams, people don't realize, no. Your offense isn't just going to spread out and be better now. It's not going to happen. They're not going to fulfill that with a first-round draft pick and win a wide receiver. It's not going to happen.
I think there's certainly something to be said about the connection between Rodgers and Adams being essentially greater than the sum of their parts, right? I don't think Davante Adams, despite his friendship and brotherhood with Derek Carr, is going to be able to recreate that magic in Vegas, just out of the blue. I mean, there is some unspoken stuff between Rodgers and Adams that's going to be missed. There's no doubt. Now, that being said, $28 million for a wide receiver is nuts. It is nuts. That is quarterback 1B money. Like, it is insane. That being said, now the Packers, now they have 2 first-round picks, they have 2 second-round picks. They can easily invest 2 draft picks in the top, 60 picks or so, and get 2 very, very, very solid receivers easily to their team. Imagine if they go get someone like, Jameson Williams, because someone he may drop a little bit because of his ACL injury, who is ridiculous.
Chris Olave is the one they're mentioning a lot for the Packers.
Chris Olave is another good one, absolutely. So you add those 2 guys to that room. Yes, they're going to be rookies. There's going to be growing pains. They're not going to recreate that magic with Rodgers in year 1, but they're going to be around for the next possible. I mean, if they both work out, which I definitely expect them to be, the next decade. They're definitely setting themselves up for success long term. This is a great, to your point, Kevin, great organizational move. I don't think they could have justified paying Adams. I don't know how the Raiders are going to justify paying Adams $28 million a year. So good for the Packers to get out when they did. And I mean, they can easily replenish that from a talent perspective, not necessarily a year 1 impact perspective, but next year, yeah, I mean, they can easily replace that production.
I'm not sure about that, but
sorry about that. The thing you have to worry about is the timeline with Rodgers. How long does he actually have left? Because he's flirted with retirement already, this offseason and a little bit last offseason. So you have to wonder if he's getting close to that point where it's like, okay, I'm done. So if he fails to even reach the Super Bowl again this year, will he say, okay, I think I'm, basically, pretty much done with this. I'm not looking towards, elevating these younger kids, any further. So I think I'm going to walk away. And if he does, it throws the entire idea of what the Packers might be able to do over the next couple of years completely out of whack, because they have no succession plan now. It's clear they don't believe in Jordan Love, because there's no way they would have handed Rodgers that contract if they believed in Jordan Love. So unless they plan on drafting another quarterback, which would probably create a whole shitstorm in and of itself again, their win now, there's no question about that. Yes, they've got these extra draft picks, but I expect them to utilize these draft picks towards trying to get this team back up to where they've been, which is competing for a Super Bowl, because the NFC is about as weak as it's been in a long time. So if they're going to make a run, it has to be now.
Right, and I'm just looking now at what the Packers got. It was a great organizational move for them, like we were just talking about, but they're still in win-now mode, and trading a guy like Devontae, this is going to set them up. Here's where they pick in 2022. So they now have the 22nd overall pick from Vegas, and then they have their own first-round pick at the 28th. So 22 and 28, 2 first-round picks this year, second-round pick, 53 and 59. The Bears pick 48th, right?
39th and 48th.
39th and 48th. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, right away, the position of needs on both these teams is wide receiver and offensive line. That really stinks, because they're going to take now 2 guys that probably the Bears are targeting. Maybe a guy at the 22 that they knew they were never going to have a shot at, but maybe a guy at 28, a guy like maybe George Pickens. They reached into the first round for him, a guy that has been heavily mentioned in Bears talks. It stinks, because we're going to watch, you're right, Drew, we're going to watch at least 2 solid players from those first 4 picks be around for the next little bit. The Packers draft very well. They always have. Gutekunst knows he's one of the best general managers in the entire NFL. So it's just frustrating that they get to pick twice before the Bears even get on the clock. But again, we'll see what happens. Regardless, trading Devontae Adams is a win for Bears fans. I think in at least the next 5 years it's a win for us.
It's a win for Jalen Johnson not having to go into the slot.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how this year plays out. I think another big move, even though the Packers wide receiving core is right now a disaster. Are the Vikings the best team in the NFC North? Because they just signed Zadarius Smith. Their front seven, they haven't been healthy on that front seven in a couple of years. But if they're healthy now, I mean, look out. They have the best 2 wide receivers in the North by light years, with Jefferson and Thielen, but they still have Kirk, very average quarterback. So are they better than the Pack? I think they are right now. I think the loss of Adams really does put the Packers at a huge disadvantage offensively. No matter what people want to say, I still think that you don't go around replacing that guy and that productivity. You just don't. That red zone productivity with Devontae and Rodgers is not going to be replaced.
I don't think Minnesota improved all that much. I think it's more the Packers sort of came back to them in terms of, losing some key guys like Zadarius Smith and Devontae Adams, obviously. So I think Minnesota's closer now because the Packers have regressed a little bit in terms of their talent, but I don't consider them all that much better than they were, last season. So they're still the same team. And, I don't know if they're going to improve all that much in the draft. They've made some moves in free agency to try and improve themselves. I don't know what they're going to do with Danielle Hunter. They flirted with trading him. Then they're flirting with keeping him. Maybe they'll trade him now that they signed Zadarius Smith. They're going to try and pair him together. If they try and pair him, that makes their defense really interesting because that's a pretty interesting pass rush tandem. But it just seems like they continue to spin their wheels in this, we're content with being 8-8 to 10-6 every year, and then losing in the first or second round of the playoffs, depending on who they play. So, if they're content with being there, that's fine, but they're still not a Super Bowl contender, and they're never going to be a Super Bowl contender as long as Kirk is their quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins is the ultimate win-with-ish quarterback. I mean, unbelievable production considering, who would have thought Kirk Cousins would be producing at the level that he has been the last few years. But look, there is certainly a ceiling with Cousins as the quarterback. I am intrigued by what Kevin O'Connell can do from a, kind of lifting the tide a little bit. I think they had reached a little bit of a ceiling with Mike Zimmer as the coach, certainly great on defense, but the offense is really what matters. And while they've had, they had a limit to their success under Zimmer, I'm wondering if O'Connell can get them over the hump a little bit. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, to Eric's point, Kirk Cousins is there. There's just going to be an imposed limit. He's getting older. His cap numbers are nuts. So it really will hurt them when it comes down to having to pay Justin Jefferson, I think, next year, possibly. So they're running out of time. I don't think they have enough firepower to beat the Packers, because I think the Packers secondary is really, really good and matches up well with what the Vikings like to do when they're healthy. So I think the Packers are still the best team in the NFC North. And quite honestly, I mean, the Bears could still give the Vikings a run for their money. I mean, they still have, the possibility of being able to compete with the Vikings. I'd love to see some of the moves that they make, but I mean, the Vikings are they're just this frustrating team where so much talent, unbelievable amounts of talent accumulated in key spots, but they really lost their window, I think.
Yeah, and you're right. Kevin O'Connell, I mean, is going to be, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, not necessarily year one, but he has a ton of talent to work with. I do think that maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on Devontae. Many people will agree with that, but I personally think I watched every Packer game for the last, working for the home of the Packers for the last, couple of years before moving down here and working for GN. I've seen every Devontae, Aaron Rodgers catch. I've seen that offense work to a T. He is the most effective offensive weapon in the NFL. And I think without him being on that roster, I really think that that's going to change things for them. And I really think that it's just going to – I know people are saying, oh, Matt LaFleur, he's undefeated without him. I believe they're 7-0 when, Devontae's not playing. And that's, again, I've always had good things to say about Matt LaFleur. I think he's a great coach, but that's not going to stay the same. I really think that's a big blow to them. But back to the Bears for a second here. We saw Byron Pringle, and I think I want to talk about him for just a little bit because I think his productivity in the Chiefs' offense is something we shouldn't look past. Does he have wide receiver one potential? I don't know. But he called Fields an elite quarterback when he signed, and I think that that's pretty cool. He's a very productive wide receiver, especially in a high-octane offense like the Chiefs, where he was probably the third or fourth option. Him and the kid who just signed, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but him and Demarcus Robinson were the two, they switched that role kind of every other game, and then you throw McCole Hardman in there. So now with more of a weighted emphasis on his play this year, or more of a a role that he's expected to take on? Do you think he can fill those shoes?
Look, but one of the most underrated stats regarding Byron Pringle, I think he was third best in the league in terms of yards of separation per route run at 4 yards. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's really amazing. Do I think he has wide receiver 1 potential? Maybe not. I think he did benefit from being that fourth option, not necessarily because of a lack of talent, but because Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill are just otherworldly. But, Pringle is solid, very, very solid. I think he can be a very effective weapon if utilized correctly. He has good speed. He knows how to get open. He knows how to sync with the quarterback and work back to him. He did that a lot with Patrick Mahomes when things kind of broke down. So Pringle is definitely a guy to watch. He's a lot of fun. Again, I wouldn't mistake his being buried on the depth chart for a lack of talent. I just think it speaks to how great the other three are. But no, I think Pringle can certainly be an easy wide receiver 2 if given the opportunity. But if he's your wide receiver 3, he's elite. If he's wide receiver 2, I think you're in good shape.
See, yeah, Mooney's there too, and they need a 1 still, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, Byron Pringle feels like he's going to be exactly what Anthony Miller should have been in terms of that great inside slot presence, because that's where he's really dangerous. His route running is great. His quickness, his zone awareness, all that sort of stuff. He just knows where the empty spaces are and he finds them, and he does that constantly if you watch him on tape. And one other underrated aspect of his game that, again, goes back to what I mentioned before is his yards after the catch. He's actually really dangerous after he gets the ball in his hands. You should see that run he had against Pittsburgh in the playoffs. It was really impressive, and he can do that a lot. So just getting him the ball in space, he can make things happen, which has been a problem for the Bears receivers in the past. They just can't seem to make plays after they make the catch. So I think that's something that Poles is sort of starting to try to emphasize a little bit more. Guys who can make plays for the quarterback rather than just the quarterback getting them the football.
So is there another free agent wide receiver coming? I guess that this is the question a lot of people want to know. Where do they look now? Are they done in the free agent market, and they're just going to look at the draft and then the post-draft market? Do you think that's where they're at this point, or do you think that there's another wide receiver move coming and maybe an offensive line move coming? They still have a couple holes to fill on that line. So, and you still got to. What do you think? Yeah, I
do think they're probably going to try and make one more offensive lineman move if possible. They're chasing the restricted free agent Ryan Bates. They're going to see if they can sign him to some sort of deal. Justifiably so, because I watched some of his film and he's really impressive. It's just that being a restricted free agent, you have to offer enough money to where it'll dissuade the Bills from matching the offer. So it's always a challenge. But if you sign him, all of a sudden your interior looks set. You've got Lucas Patrick at center. You've got Cody Whitehair probably at left guard, and then you can slide Bates right in there to right guard. There's your interior. And so maybe you draft, an offensive tackle and then sort of work from there. And then I do think they're going to sign another wide receiver, but it'll probably be another depth option of some type. And then maybe they'll go chasing some talent in the draft and then just sort of try and, figure out what they have after the draft. And maybe if they feel they don't have quite enough, if somebody, a decent veteran is available, then they'll go chasing him.
Agreed. I think they're going to probably focus on players that can potentially prove themselves in 2022 to be part of that core moving forward. But again, they're building towards 2023, 2024. A lot of their moves this year are going to be temporary, filling out the roster type of moves for depth, for just giving someone an opportunity, maybe a tryout basis. And then, we do expect the roster to be largely rounded out by guys who are undrafted free agents who are looking for an opportunity. So to your point, Kevin, about where do they look now? I think the draft is going to be certainly a big spot. I do expect another move, maybe 2, to try to, accumulate some more draft capital, whether it's a trade down with one of their current second-round picks, or someone like Cody Whitehair, someone like maybe Eddie Jackson, Robert Quinn, possibly, without entirely killing the defense. But I do think there are possibly moves to be made there. And then, invest well, build in the at least 1 or 2 wide receivers, I would imagine, in the draft. Maybe someone who is more of a sure thing in the second round, and then maybe someone who's, has like that talent who can be coached up by Tyke Tolbert, someone in like the 6th round maybe. I would imagine looking there, and then if there's a veteran who's cut after the draft or towards the end of training camp, maybe someone like I'm giving an example here, Deshaun Jackson, or someone that could come in and be an interesting option there for filling out the roster and being that favorite option for 2022 for Justin Fields, would be someone worth looking into.
That's an interesting point too. I think maybe we'll see a trade down for the Bears in the draft, maybe to acquire more of those late. I think, and I also think you bring up a good thing with Robert Quinn. You trade Khalil Mack, and you're looking to get younger. Quinn's obviously 32, maybe 33 now. I can't remember, but 32. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him move too. But we haven't heard any smoke around that at this point. I think maybe you don't want to put, you're right, you don't want to put too many holes in that defense when you're already, you're looking at a 25-year-old 3-tech that you just signed, who is largely no one's ever heard of, and he's gonna, not learning a new system per se, but coming into a new environment. There's going to be a lot to ask of him, and I think having a guy like Quinn on that front with him will certainly help. So you don't want to kill it completely, but if you're looking towards the future, if an offer's there, I think you take it. So just kind of how we said with Khalil Mack, as much as that sucked, you take it because you need more depth. Well, that pretty much does it with Bears news. There's not a whole lot more on that front, but a ton has happened in the National Football League over the last couple of weeks. Let's start with I'd say the quarterback carousel is easily the biggest news. It's quarterbacks flying around, going every which way. Drew, I'll let you start this because your highly beloved Baker Mayfield isn't going to play next year.
Shut the fuck
up. Any team.
Yeah, this has been a very angering offseason. My guy Baker has been getting fucked by incompetent front offices, if I must say so. I think, look, a lot of the moves.
Not a very adult thing to say of you, by the way.
It's fine. This is
how they wanted an adult. Wanted an adult at quarterback.
Well, I'm not the quarterback.
And so they trade for a guy with 22 allegations.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. That was my tweet, basically. I was like, they wanted an adult, and they took Deshaun Watson. Look, with all due respect to all the open allegations that are against Deshaun Watson right now, and all the women who have come out and are still having these civil cases being heard and kind of under process, I think it's just, I'm not going to comment on the whole process of them deciding to ignore, obviously, the comments they put out about, we did our due diligence on Deshaun Watson. No, they didn't. No, that's fucking ridiculous. It's absolutely insane that they can come out and say that.
His defense attorney came out and said they never reached out to me once before putting that statement
nonsense. Out. It's absolute nonsense that they would come out, all three of them, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, someone else. It's just nuts. So that part is very, very aggravating. It's just clear deceit, and it's just upsetting. So apart from that, I think the trade for I think the Commanders probably jumped the gun a little bit on trading for Carson Wentz. I don't think they needed
exactly what I was thinking. It's like, man, if you had just waited, you could have gotten Baker.
Yeah, it's a little too trigger happy. So I'm concerned about them and that trade that they made. Good for the Colts to get Matt Ryan.
I think solid trade for them. Yeah,
a very solid trade, not too expensive for them.
There's your example. They waited.
They did. They waited. I think they definitely raised the floor, which I think will help them a little bit. I'm concerned about the ceiling a little bit. I love Matt Ryan still, but he is getting older. He's lost some of that zip on his fastball.
They need better receivers. I love Michael Pittman Jr. I think he's a great player for them, but they need another option or probably two. So
agreed. And so those are the main moves. I mean, obviously Russell Wilson to Denver is interesting. I don't necessarily know how he's going to fit in that offense, but that'll be fascinating to watch. But I think he has a heck of an arsenal of receivers out there. So Denver will be fun to watch. And then what am I missing?
Mitch Trubisky.
Our man Mitch, signing in Pittsburgh. Oh yeah, Marcus Mariota going to Atlanta.
Tom Brady coming out of retirement.
Okay, yeah, I missed a lot. Okay, so
yeah,
Brady,
why are you even on this show? You literally forgot all of it, and so did I. But even though I have a tab for Brady,
I blame my month off. No, Tom Brady obviously coming back. It first of all, ecstatic that he's back one more year. I was not ready to say goodbye to Tom Brady. I'm so glad he's back. So we'll see if it really matters, but and if how good he still is. And at age 45, but there's no indication that he's slowing down. So I'm excited about that.
He was great. He led the league in yards last year.
Yeah.
He was phenomenal. He was great last year. Almost brought him all the way back in that playoff game against the Rams. So no, I'm thrilled to have Brady back. I love watching him play football. So,
and last comment I'll make. Obviously, I shared my disdain about what's happening with Baker Mayfield, but really happy for Marcus Mariota. I think he has definitely served a undeserved sentence as a backup quarterback for way too long in this league. I'm very happy for him. I think he's going to a shitty situation in Atlanta. Very, very terrible situation, but good for him. He's getting an opportunity, and hopefully he can turn around his career a little bit.
I'm very curious to see what happens with Baker because I don't see a lot of spots he can go to because Carolina doesn't want him. He doesn't want Carolina, so that's out. The only team I can think of is Seattle, and they seem committed to Drew Lock for some reason. So, there's really not a lot of landing spots that make sense to me. So he might be stuck.
Yeah.
It's funny with Baker too is he's kind of heading down that path that Mariota was on in his right after he left the Titans, or they went out and got Tannehill. So it's gonna be a similar route for him. And you know what? I'll be honest. I'm not a Baker guy. I don't think he deserves to not have a starting job in the NFL. I think he's still a starting quarterback in this league right now. But listen, like I get where putting. How do I say this without making it sound bad? You see the elite level quarterbacks in this league, and you look at the Browns and where they're at. Going out and trading for Amari Cooper. Deshaun Watson on a quarterback level is much, much, much better than Baker Mayfield. But there's also a lot of baggage that comes with that and potentially a half a season suspension because he's still going to get suspended from the NFL. We don't know how long, but listen, I don't know where Baker ends up, but he's heading towards that backup role, and he's heading there quickly, and that's really unfortunate for him because I do think that he is a starting quarterback in the league. I don't think he's very good. But I still think he is, right around that mid-level quarterback. You're looking at all 32 teams. He's right around that 15, 16 best quarterback in the league. He's right there. So
one destination that I saw being brought up was Detroit, and I thought that was very interesting. I would hate it for the NFC North if he came to the end because I still think he's very, very good, but that was an interesting possible destination. I saw another thing where, I think to Rami's point right here, if the Browns straight up cut him, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they did, and I'm not able to bring it up and highlight it, but Rami Abdelhadi's comment here, how about Trubisky, Mayfield fight it out for the starting job? Yeah, if they cut him, Pittsburgh probably would absolutely be happy to take him. Certainly would instantly be the best quarterback on that roster. Still, knows the NFC or the AFC North very well, obviously. I think it would be a very interesting move if they did that. But I don't know where he's going to go. Definitely, probably the only fascinating situation still remaining is what's going to happen with Baker. I think the rest of the jobs are more or less settled, and then obviously we have the draft coming up where.
What do you guys think about Philly?
Ooh.
He'd be smart to find an NFC job because the NFC is a more winnable division. You might win a playoff game, make yourself look a little bit better. I think he'd be smart to land in the NFC.
NFC East too. I mean, that's a relatively simple division.
Giants.
Comparatively.
Now the Giants might be. I didn't even think about that because they've been looking at options to move on from Daniel Jones. They haven't really been able to.
They're probably less committed to Daniel Jones than the Eagles are to Jalen Hurts, so I guess that would make sense.
See, I like Jalen Hurts too. I think the Eagles are going to give him another shot this year. He was pretty fun in a couple games that I watched of him last year. More than a couple. I watched a lot of Eagles games last year, but you know what? Now that I think about it, I think I would have to put my money on Baker to the Giants. I really think that could be a serious move. Just because where else are they going? I don't know where they're picking this year, but it's not a strong quarterback draft. Maybe they're headed for that right now. But if you can, I think you could probably get Baker for probably
Day 2 pick, probably.
Yeah, third or fourth round pick. So at that price, I mean, Drew, you got to be all over that, right? I mean, I think he's definitely worth that. And again, I'm not a huge
Day
fan.
2 pick, the Bears should probably trade for him. Shit.
It's weird. I thought about it. Would Ryan Poles not want to put all his eggs in the Justin Fields basket? Bring in some, but I don't think he has the picks to really throw away for that, unfortunately. So
can you imagine the uproar? I mean, Bears Twitter is so like sensitive as it is. It's
I'm so here for it, to be perfectly honest.
I would love it. It'd be so fun. But no,
I'm not here for that at all. I don't want Baker Mayfield on this team.
Well, we're here to watch you melt down for it.
I'm here for that. Sign me up.
I do not want Baker Mayfield on my football team. But again, think he's a fine quarterback. I'm not. Yeah, take that receipt. If the Bears, what should I do? If the Bears trade for Baker Mayfield, what do I have to do? You guys come up with a punishment, and I'll do it. We'll come up with that for like next show or something. I don't want him on this team.
Sounds like a plan. On next show, we'll be discussing why Kevin's like quitting the show because Baker Mayfield's now the Bears' presumed starter.
I'm resigning my media career and I'm going to go work in sales. I know he works for a competitor, but Jacob Infante is a really fun follow on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And he tweeted out something that I saw yesterday that was really, really interesting. And I think that this, I know it's a new regime and I know they didn't draft Fields, but the Bears getting Justin Fields in the flashes that he showed last year, think of the quarterback moves that we've now seen and what teams are willing to give up to get a franchise guy. And I still think Fields can be a franchise guy. He showed those signs of being pretty solid. Atlanta trading for Matt Ryan, I think that's a good trade for the Colts. I think it was fine. But Carolina trading for Sam Darnold and paying him all that money. Oh, good God. Denver giving up throwing away their next 5-6 years of draft picks to get Russell Wilson. Probably going to work for them in the short term, but they play in a nuclear arms race of a division. So are they really going to win that division? Could they even make the playoffs?
And I keep saying this, expect their defense to take a step back without Fangio there now. So,
exactly. Yes.
Russell's probably going to end up in the same exact situation he was in with Seattle.
And then what I was just saying about the Giants, they traded the pick to the Bears last year so the Bears could get Fields, and now they're stuck with Daniel Jones. So unless they maybe go make a move for Baker Mayfield, where are they? Those are 4 teams right now with no answer at quarterback. I know the Colts may have one for the short term, but that's not a long-term answer. Matt Ryan maybe has 2 good years left. He probably gets to the playoffs with that defense. But they're not winning a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan. No way.
Especially not in the AFC.
No way. Yeah, they're going to be a first-round out. Exactly. That's my point is the Bears, the more and more we look at the Justin Fields pick, even if he doesn't go out and light the world on fire this year, he's just an above-average, solid quarterback. They really, really lucked out, and it's turning out to be a very good pick from the Pace Nagy era. Regardless of what we want to say, it seems to be falling in their favor, especially with what we're seeing from the combine right now with some of these quarterbacks. We're seeing some guys with good arms, and we're seeing some guys do this and that. But man, oh man, Fields would be the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft, and I don't think it would be close.
And here's the deal, though. I mean, it's a point well taken, Kevin. And I think if you have a level of comfort that question's been answered for you, then you meaning the Bears, is great. To your point about if he's above average, solid quarterback, I think that'll be the most interesting thing about this year is I don't care about the stats. I don't care about who his pass catchers are. I mean, yes, it'll matter in terms of productivity and wins, but when I look at Justin Fields, if he is still relying on his receivers to be the reason he puts up any sort of productivity, he's not able to locate his passes, properly. He needs heroic catches. He needs, bailout catches, like those kinds of things. Every quarterback does from time to time, but if that is the majority of his play, then he very likely isn't going to be the guy. And so that's the kind of play that we want to see in year 2 is he that guy that can elevate a player? Is he that guy that is making his throws pinpoint, making the right decisions, reading defenses well, really showing that he can be a win because of quarterback instead of win with quarterback? And if he can't show at least a trajectory towards that, the Bears have serious questions to ask. Like, is it worth? I mean, I'll give you an example. Kyler Murray is going into year 5 this year, and he is clearly making all these statements about wanting a big contract and everything. Is he worth that? Is he worth that money? Is he a win because of quarterback? We haven't seen it.
I don't think so.
We have never seen it. So
yeah, I don't think so.
We don't want and no one wants the Bears to be in that similar situation where they don't cave to the pressure of Justin Fields is a great name, and so we need to lock this guy under contract because then the fans will revolt. I think that'll be one of the things I'm interested in seeing what Ryan Poles does is, look, I understand Justin Fields is a great name. He didn't show us that level of amazingness in year 2. Year 3, obviously, we still have him under contract. If he's showing kind of that same trajectory in year 3 years from now, I hope we're in a situation where Ryan Poles is smart enough to say he isn't worth the money and moves on. Or if he is showing that, even if the production doesn't match, if production's low because his pass catchers weren't great, but he's been making all the throws on tape, yeah, this is a guy that we can win with. That part I see a lot. And again, you guys can disagree with my evaluations. I know we do when it comes to Baker. But when it comes to that level of evaluation, I see teams struggle with that a lot. They will commit money to players who are being, lifted or carried by great pass catchers, but they are not people that can make that tough throw, the Matthew Stafford type throw in the Super Bowl. They never have made that, never can make that. Those are the kinds of people that elevate you. Those are the kinds of people that deserve that big money. I know this is a 3-year down the line conversation, but
I know what you mean. It's just like we look at it's going to be. You're right. We do need to see more of those throws this year. But we saw a lot of plays from Fields last year where he made the offense work, and he made it work well. There obviously was a handful of flunker games too. I'll never forget that Cleveland game. It was the worst football game I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes offensively. It was horrible, but it's gonna. This is where this wraps the show all into one. My frustration level with the lack of investment now on the offensive side of the ball so far. The Bears have regressed on offense. They've gotten worse at the wide receiver position. They lost Allen Robinson. They've gotten worse on the offensive line. I'm not really sold on, what's his face being the center. I don't know how they're going to come up with finding a guy to fill out one of those guard positions, and then hearing the talks of Larry Borum maybe not being their favorite. And then there's so many holes, especially offensively, that if you're regressing in the 2 positions that you need the most help in, and we're just now starting out, I mean, it's disappointing. And I know that there's going to be a plan for this, but I think that we're going to have to maybe temper our expectations on the quarterback if they can't seem to figure these things out. That's just my take. And right now, I don't know if they're figuring it out.
I think we're going to find out this coming year how much of a problem the coaching was last year, how bad Matt Nagy and his staff really were. Because if Justin Fields takes a considerable step forward, which he can no doubt do, then we're going to realize, oh my God, he wasn't just fighting a lack of talent around him. He was fighting the actual coaching as well, which a lot of people say was the case. The scheme was, disjointed and all messed up. It was working against him at times, not leaning into his strengths, all that stuff. We heard it all year. So Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus have both said, we're going to work to the strengths of our players, especially the quarterback. And if they're telling the truth on that, then we're going to see a very different scheme that leans into his athleticism, leans into his comfort zones in terms of what he does well. Because we saw that when the Bears actually tried to do that last year, like the Pittsburgh game, he played really well. And if they do that all year, then it stands to reason he should play well for most of the year. So it's one of those logic-based things that, yes, they need talent, but I think the coaching needs to be effective enough first before you can start worrying about the talent around him. It's all building towards that thing of getting him a supporting cast in the coaching staff, on the roster, all that sort of stuff, building that foundation around him to help him excel, and they're just not there yet because of how badly it was mismanaged over the past couple of years.
Interesting points all around, no question. This is the Club Dub Podcast, presented by SportsMockery.com. Go ahead and submit some of your questions. We already got a lot of them rolling in the comments, so we'll get over those in a minute. Go over them and give our best answers and questions. If you guys like the show, we've had a lot of viewers again today. I know we've been off for about a month. We finally got some news to talk about. So a lot of quarterbacks been moving around, a lot of NFL news. It's a year-long league, but we go through that month after the Super Bowl. It gets a little tough, gets a little quiet. So now that we're back on it, we're about a month from the draft. We're going to have a lot of mock-ups to come over the next couple of weeks. We'll talk about any future moves that the Bears make. I think, Eric mentioned he doesn't think they're done. I don't think they're done either. I think you'll look for another offensive line piece. There's just too many holes. There's 6 to 9 starting positions on this team that still arguably need to be filled. So still a lot of moves to be made. We'll continue to follow them. Drew, you did forget about one significant quarterback move. Trevor Siemian visited Hallis Hall today.
What
the hell does this mean? Does this mean we're going to see a Nick Foles trade or what? What does this mean? Maybe he's just back home visiting his old pal Pat Fitzgerald, who will get mentioned for the Bears job in the next 4 years as soon as gets fired.
Or he could just be a training camp addition. Get that third quarterback they're probably going to need. So
Siemian was an interesting, fill-in quarterback in New Orleans at times, and in certain cases, or Denver, he also had an interesting stint. Siemian, I have a soft spot for him. Went to my alma mater, but he's just a guy. I mean, clearly not anyone that's going to come in, challenge for any sort of starting job, but could possibly be that QB2 if they decide to get rid of Nick Foles, which I don't know why they would this year, considering I think all his guaranteed money's already been paid, or at least is going to be on their books. So
I think that's the point a lot of people are trying to make, because the guaranteed money's paid. He's much more attractive as a trade chip now because the other teams don't have to pay it. So it's a question of would another team be willing to give up that late round pick to get him? They weren't last year, probably because of the guaranteed money. So now he's much more tradable, but you just don't know. It's hard it's one of those things that's really difficult to predict.
I mean, worst comes to worst, he's better than Tyler Bray. Or who did they have last year? What was his name? Ryan Willis, I think, was their third stringer last year, right? Or the practice.
How do you remember that?
What?
How do you remember that?
I don't know. I'm a Bears guy, Drew.
It's true.
And I also have Google pulled up here, so
there you go. Okay.
I did know Tyler Bray's name though, just because dude's been around forever. I know he wasn't on the team last year, but dude was the practice squad guy for fucking 6 years. It seemed like he was always around. So, but no, this is an interesting one. Trevor Siemian needs a job. Hey, Pat Fitzgerald's well connected in the Bears organization. I'm sure he put in a good word. Maybe he was here to say something, but I don't know. It's interesting. See where he ends up. I'm trading Nick Foles would be dumb. I still think Nick Foles is one of the better backups in the entire league.
Yeah.
But again, what do they need? They need draft capital. If the team gets into an injury situation, and you look what these quarterbacks are going for. I mean, Matt Ryan gets a third. Nick Foles can probably get you a fifth, maybe a sixth.
And in the case of 2022, like if Justin Fields gets injured, like who gives a fuck about the backup, right?
Yep.
Like that's kind of the idea. So if you can get a draft pick, sure.
Take your questions here on the Club Dub Podcast. Let's go up to the top of the comments section. Kind of talked about this from Jeremy Munoz. New viewer, haven't seen you out there before, Jeremy. Thank you for tuning in. When do you think we hear about Ryan Bates?
I think we'll probably hear whether or not he received an offer from a team, whether it's the Bears, Vikings, or Patriots, probably within the next 24 hours, now that all his visits, at least that we know of, are concluded. And if and when he does accept that, I believe the Bills will have about 5 days to match said offer. So we should know within a week, is my assumption, whether or not he ends up with the Bears, another team, or just goes back to Buffalo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would agree. And I hope, I hope the Bears are smart enough to get him a contract. His tape is great. I mean, He's a lot of fun to watch, very versatile, has that meanness / toughness that Ryan Poles is very excited about. So hopefully it's something that works out.
And he's got connections to Ian Cunningham, so you'd think they might have a bit of an inside track there.
He's 25. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's definitely one of those guys that fits the bill.
Another comment from Jeremy, not a question, but a comment I like to see. You need to get creative and try and get DK Metcalf. Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. don't see that happening. It'd be, that'd cost you a lot, but we'll see how that goes. Let's see here. From Bryson, one of our great viewers who's always tuning in, Christian, Watson, Mooney, Pringle, thoughts?
I mean, I don't really hate it. Watson's a fascinating prospect. I mean, he's got some, red flags to me. His production wasn't as high as I wish it would have been for somebody as talented as he is, although...
Where did he go?
North Dakota State.
That's right. Yeah, it's the North Dakota guy.
And when you have a guy like Trey Lance as your quarterback at one point, so, where was all the production? Although, I understand North Dakota State's more of a run-first team, but still, when you're that talented, you expect to be a little more productive than he was. No question, he can probably be a better pro than he was a college athlete. And North Dakota State's put some good players, into the NFL. Carson Wentz, early in his career anyway, was a really good player. Billy Turner, really good player for the Packers. So, you have faith that with his skill level, 6'5", 4'3", sub 4.40, all that stuff, he can play. There's no question he can play, but, is he that guy who will contribute right away? I'm not entirely sure about that.
Would agree. And I'm interested to know how much, percentage of Trey Lance's production was actually went to Christian Watson. Cause I think Trey Lance did not throw the ball very much in North Dakota State. So I'd be curious to know that. But in general, I think George Pickens is a better prospect. I know Christian Watson's gotten a lot of hype, given his size and everything. And he's shown some good, route running on film at the combine. There was a couple of one-on-ones that they showed where he kind of broke some ankles, which was cool. But
I saw those, yeah.
Yeah, but George Pickens is awesome. Great hands, good quickness, blocks well. Definitely seems very, very interesting. Could be a very solid player for the Bears. So he's someone I would prioritize probably.
Yeah, Pickens is the guy I want. I don't watch a lot of college football, but I watched the national championship. He was the most explosive player on the field. So
Ryan Pace would be so happy.
And honestly, I don't.
Ryan Pace would have taken Georgia's tight end, who scored that touchdown in the everyone's name. Anyway, what were you saying, Drew?
I was going to say I don't think he's going to fall this far, but if somehow Jameson Williams gets down to that bottom half of that first round, oh man, I would be so tempted to trade up somehow because that guy is a future star. I mean,
yeah, he's a beast. Yeah, he'll probably fall out of the first round because the ACL. It's just like looking at what Poles has done in free agency. I don't think he's even going to be looking at him. But
probably not.
He was awesome.
Probably going to play it safe this year at least because he needs guys he can rely on to probably play because he's not at a point where he can afford to take risks right now. And I totally respect that. He already took a risk on Ogunjobi and he had to, pull out of that one really fast. So, I think he's going to be a little bit more cautious in that regard, but maybe he'll think of it the other way. Maybe at this point I should just take some swings and, if I hit a home run, all the better.
Can we cover the outrage on the whole Larry Ogunjobi thing real quick? Why are people mad at not Larry Ogunjobi? Isn't that the process that you should be following?
It is, but you got to be doing, I think, here, and I'll speak from the perspective of, I'm not mad about it. It's just more of a frustrating thing when you go out there and you're targeting a guy right away, and then as soon as you sign him, as soon as the Schefter report goes out, Bengals are like, oh, thank God. And they sign their guy right afterwards, that Brian Hill or Justice Hill. BJ Hill. Wow, I got all third choice, got it right. I knew his last name was Hill. But they go out and give him the money right afterwards, and they're like, wow. And you look at Bengals fans in the comments like, yeah, no, he's better anyway. It's things like that where maybe not doing as much research on a guy can come back to bite you and you kind of face plant and look dumb. But at the same time, why would you be mad would you rather give that guy $26.5 million guaranteed when he's hurt? Like, no, but
I frankly think just the weirdest thing was the timing because they announced the player. They did a hype video on Twitter. All of that was strange. So I thought
they kind of fell on their face a little bit.
Yeah, I get that, but that's more embarrassment than anger-inducing. There was a lot of outrage on Twitter. I'm like, but they didn't sign him. Like, what's the problem? It's just I don't know. I thought that was strange, but it could have been very well one of those situations where they sign him and then all of a sudden it's like a Pernell McPhee situation where he's on PUP for the first year and you're like, well, we just wasted the 27th birthday year of Larry Ogunjobi, who's supposed to be our 3 technique heading into Justin Fields' prime, years.
It just sucks because he is that age too, and he was pretty good before he got hurt in the playoffs. That part of it really, really sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see if he gets a job anywhere, or if somebody
or at least a
signs him.
deal that big. Maybe they come back with like a.
I don't think he'll get it. He'll probably take a 1-year deal and try to reestablish his stock for next year. That would be my assumption. He might go back to Cincinnati, to be perfectly honest.
Why wouldn't the Bears offer him that 1-year deal for a tryout here?
They might. I mean, you got Jones. He's good. He's a great run defender, the guy they signed, Jones. So you could move him over to nose tackle if you want, and then still make a run at Ogunjobi if he's still interested. But, you just don't know. If Ogunjobi's still around, a month from now or whatever, then absolutely you might as well try and make another run at him. But obviously you can't offer him the money you offered him before.
Right. I think another reason the frustration mounts for a lot of people is the Bears basically just said see ya to Bilal Nichols and basically burn the bridge with Akeem Hicks by saying we got to get lighter. And, it's things like that where Akeem Hicks is maybe one of the best, interior linemen left on the market. Definitely top 5. You go down and look at the list of guys who are free agents. But I think that's where frustration came into play is they were kind of just like, oh, yeah, I mean, we don't need these guys. We got our plan. And then their plan completely backfired. And, granted, they did have a backup. Justin Jones was a guy that they got literally the next day. So,
yeah.
But I think that was where the frustration came from for most people. This was interesting. I didn't see any outrage on this on Twitter. I know, we saw Justin Fields worked out with Colin Kaepernick. I don't care. These guys all work out together. We saw, honestly, there should have been more outrage when Fields and Deshaun Watson share an agent, and they were working out in the height of that all of last summer. It was Jordan Love, Deshaun Watson, and Fields all working out down in I don't remember where they were. It might have been Georgia or Texas.
Houston, I think.
Yeah, it might have been. It might have been in Houston. I didn't see any outrage over this. Maybe they were just like, oh, great, he's working with an average quarterback who, we want him to be working with elite quarterbacks and things like that. But I don't have a problem with this at all. These guys, they're all NFL quarterbacks. They're all friends. They all talk. This is not new. These guys work out together. Unless you're Aaron Rodgers when you isolate everybody. But these guys all know each other. This is not it's like any professional sport. So they all share money and agents and everything.
They're just finding things to be mad about. It's not a big deal. As long as Justin Fields isn't learning Colin Kaepernick's release, then that's all that matters.
If you watch the video, he hasn't. So
yeah, which is good.
Before we get out of here, I did want to mention one last thing. I forgot to go over these when we were doing the signings, but one of the new things we're seeing with the Ryan Poles era, he likes to release statements on players he signed, and I think that these are really funny. Just because
you're gonna get to Equanemeous St. Brown, aren't you?
I'm gonna pull that one up. But here's this guy. So this is an Eberflus signing. Quan represents the play style Coach Eberflus wants our entire team to have. His motor, his desire to affect the game stands out. We are excited to have him. We would like to thank Drew Rosenhaus of Rosenhaus Sports for helping bring him to Chicago. This is, again, very clearly a Ryan Poles guy, former Colts player, going to really help on that defensive line. He's going to help in the sorry about that. That's blind. He's going to help with the linebacking core. And then you go from that, and then you get one of these. We are excited to add Equanemeous St. Brown, the newest Bear. We'd like to thank Joey Brannion at Vanguard Sports. Look at this. His motor of desire stands out. Nah, nothing really stands out here. Byron Pringle, same position. Grinder, he brings toughness, dependability. He also improves our offense, but will impact our special teams. We'd like to thank Joey Brannion at Vanguard Sports for bringing him to Chicago. I just think this is absolutely hysterical because we're going to know now. I wonder if this will be a thing in the future for the next how many years Ryan Poles is here. But if we get this on every free agent signing and trade, we're going to know immediately the type of guy exactly what Ryan Poles thinks because he's not trying to sugarcoat. I just think that's very, very funny.
That's just awesome.
Here's kind of another one, just like he's a guy. Cool, thanks.
He's a fullback.
Fullback, no one cares.
Like that.
Yeah, he'll be okay. All right, sounds good. And then, yeah.
Basically him saying, "This is Luke Getsy's guy. I wanted nothing to do with it. Moving on."
I will say though, just real quick, The concept of thanking agents in each of these releases, I think, is neat.
Smart, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think quite smart. I mean, these are people that he's very likely going to have relationships for years to come moving forward. It's a good way to maybe get.
And they have other clients the Bears are probably going to want to sign in the future.
Exactly. So I think it's a good way to kind of ingratiate yourself with agents and smart. I mean, 36-year-old young GM, but he's learned some cool tricks. So I think that's neat and pretty smart.
No question about it. If you missed the show, you'll be able to recap it on our Twitter page. We'll repost it tomorrow as well. Again, go ahead and give us a follow at clubdub_podcast. Follow me at Wells15Kevin, at Drew Cole, at Eric Lambert. You can find all of our stuff online at sportsmockery.com. If you missed the show again, we just talked about Devontae Adams getting traded. Big time moves in the NFC North. Great organizational move for the Packers. They now have 2 first and 2 second round picks. Bears, obviously, we talked about the fallout of the Khalil Mack trade. We talked a little bit about them being quiet in free agency and what that kind of means for their future and the type of guys they're trying to sign. So a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information on the show. Talked about our old friend. Mitchell Trubisky is the new quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shout out to Mitch. I hope he wins that job unless, maybe Baker Mayfield goes there. Quarterbacks moving around. The NFL is a 12-month-long
really is
drama-filled league, and we love every second of it. So it's going to be fun. We got a month till the draft. Lots of shows to get you prepped for that. So make sure you continue to follow us. We'll have shows moving on now. Tuesdays up until the draft, talking about the guys we want to pick. We'll have, a lot of new stuff coming out because I don't think the Bears are done. I think another offensive line move we agreed on, right? Probably another one.
Yeah. Hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So more moves to be had.
Defensive back as well. They really haven't done much on the defensive backfield.
Yeah, I know. It's gonna. Right now? I mean, you'll have Thomas Graham, and then you obviously have Jalen, and then they just signed DeAndre Houston Carson and Eddie Jackson. But yeah, you still got a big hole at that other corner 2 position. Yeah, Thomas Graham's unproven. So right, again, there's 6 to 9 starting spots on this team that still need to be filled out. So lots of stuff to get to in the future. But for Eric and Drew, I'm Kevin Wells. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go ahead and give us a follow, and we will, we'll chat with you guys. Let's do a show next Tuesday. How about it, huh? I'll be here.
Let's do it.
Hopefully the Bears will have signed some more people by then.
All right. For the Club Dub Podcast, we'll see you guys next week. Peace.